G'day and welcome to Fox Cricket's follow-on podcast. My name's Nic Savage. I'm filling in for Courtney Walsh. She's on a plane across to Perth at the moment ahead of the first test between Australia and India, and I am joined by, well, a childhood hero of mine actually. He's a World Cup champion, an Ashes hero, and one of Fox Cricket's commentators ahead of the summer of cricket. I'm joined by none other than Michael Hussey. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the series starting. It should be very exciting. Can't wait.
Obviously, the Border Gavaskar Trophy is now one of cricket's great modern contests. What was it like during your days playing against India, and how has that rivalry changed in the decade or so since?
Yeah, I think over the last 15, 20 years, the rivalry's really grown. I think India have become a real powerhouse in world cricket. And yeah, like their fans are so fanatical. There's been so many great players come out of that country over the years. Sachin, obviously, and Harbhajan Singh, and I don't know. There's too many to name, I guess, over the years. But yeah, I just feel like the rivalry's really grown so much, and now probably got arguably the two best teams in the world that are just fighting it out. And India have obviously won the last two series in Australia, which is so rare for Australia to lose in Australia. So it certainly adds a lot to the series. And, I can't think of probably a bigger series other than an Ashes series, really, for an Australian team.
Have you had a chance to look at the Perth deck yet? Can we expect another bouncy Optus Stadium pitch?
Well, I haven't actually been able to get out there yet. There's been quite a bit of rain over here in Perth in the lead up to the test. So I don't know if that's affected the groundsman's preparation of the pitch. I do believe there's quite a bit of grass on the pitch, which he was hoping to take a little bit off, but it should be hard and pretty fast as well. So I'd expect it might be a little bit slower on the first day, with a bit of moisture in the pitch. And then as it hardens up and dries out, it should just get faster and faster as the test match wears on.
Well, hopefully we don't get any rain on Friday or for the 5 days after that. Obviously, with the Australian side, the big storyline is Nathan McWhirter, who's expected to make his test debut tomorrow. Were you surprised at all by his selection? There was certainly a lot of debate at the time. He's obviously not a specialist opener. What did you make of his call-up?
Yeah, well, I mean, they've rewarded good form, in good current form. He's obviously performed really well for South Australia over the last year and a bit, I guess. And I think the hardest thing for him is going to be the adjustment from batting, say, number 4 or number 3 up to being an opening batsman. I think he's got the game, the temperament and the technique to be able to handle the move, but it's more dealing with the mental side of the game and the preparation, being mentally ready to go. Sometimes you're out in the field for, I don't know, maybe 100 overs or so, and then you've got 10 minutes to get straight back off, and you're out there with the pads on ready to open the batting. So that can be a real mental challenge. Normally as a number 4, you've got time to have a shower and just mentally relax a little bit before going out to bat. So that's probably the biggest adjustment he's going to have to make. But it seems like the selectors have got the philosophy of let's just pick the 6 best batsmen in the country who we think they are, and then we'll just figure out what they batting from there. And so it's going to be a real challenge for Nathan McWhirter. I think moving from a position that he feels comfortable in up to a position that he's not really done before. Especially against such a great team like India. You're going to be coming up against someone like Bumrah in challenging conditions. It'll be tough for him, but he looks like a really good and well-organised player. So, let's hope he gets off to a great start to his career.
You started your career as an opener, succeeded there, then you scored the bulk of your test runs at 4, finished up at around 5 and 6. Was that a tough adjustment to make, trying all those different roles in the Australian test side?
I think probably being an opener to start with probably helped, because you're used to facing the new ball. And to be honest, opening the batting's the hardest job in the game. It's such a tough position to bat. I batted in the middle order in one-day cricket quite a lot, so that probably helped me make the adjustments of being able to bat in the middle order in Test cricket. But I must admit, initially, it was very different, and it's just coming out with new routines on how you get yourself ready, probably more mentally than anything, to be able to get ready to perform. So, there was definitely some adjustments to be made, but I quite enjoyed batting in the middle order. It was a lot of fun, batting in so many different situations. You might come in when the team's in a lot of trouble, losing 3 or 4 wickets early, and you've got to try and resurrect the innings. You might come in, when the team's done really well and looking to declare, and you've got to tee off and score as many runs as you can. You get to bat with the tail a little bit sometimes as well, which is a lot of fun. So, I really enjoyed the different challenges of batting in the middle order.
Of course, batting with the tail at the MCG against South Africa was one of your finest test knocks, of course. But just back on Nathan McWhirter, you played a small but significant role in his rise. You conducted a review into South Australian cricket a few years ago. One of the recommendations that came from that was encouraging South Australia to poach talent from other states. And one of Gillespie's first moves was to bring across Nathan McWhirter. And of course, his career has flourished since then. You must feel a little bit of pride knowing that you've played a small role in his rise to test status.
Oh, I'm not sure I can take much credit for that one. I mean, that's a pretty long bow. But if you're willing to throw it my way, I'm happy to take it, But yeah, I mean, I must admit, doing the review to South Australia was fascinating. It's a fascinating experience just to sort of get the ideas and the thoughts from everyone in South Australian cricket from different ends of the spectrum, really. Some really proud, parochial South Australians, and then the other end, other players and administrators that could sort of see the game growing in South Australia and how they could become a real powerhouse in the Sheffield Shield competition. And one of the ideas was that because the population is not huge in South Australia, to be able to try and bring talent from interstate, particularly from probably the bigger populated states like Victoria and New South Wales. But it's pretty good that they managed to get Nathan McWhirter, who he looks like a quality player, and I'm sure would have been in Queensland's plans for the future. But for him to be able to move to South Australia, get an opportunity, and now playing Test cricket for Australia, it's a good story. And I'm sure South Australia says that is a bit of a win and a bit of a success story from their plan of bringing interstate talent into their program.
Well, of course, there's now 3 South Australian Test cricketers in the side alongside Travis Head and Alex Carey. First time in decades that's happened, so plenty for the Redbacks to be excited about there. I guess with McWhirter, what happens if the first couple of tests, first 3 tests, he has a bit of a rough trot, gets some low scores? Do the selectors back him for all 5 tests, or are you open to the idea of them maybe trying someone different for Melbourne and Sydney if things don't work out?
Well, I believe that this Test squad has been picked for just the first Test match. So I don't know. I don't know if you can read into that or not. But look, I'd be very surprised if they've made the big call of bringing Nathan McWhirter into the Test team, opening the batting. I'd be very surprised if after a couple of Test matches they said, no, this isn't working and we're going to move to someone else. I think they'll give him a run at it and allow him some time to sort of settle into the role. As I said, it's a big adjustment for him, moving from middle order up to the top. It's going to take a little bit of time. So I hope they just back him in. And we know he's a good player. We know he's got some runs behind him for South Australia. Team is a long-term sort of player for Australia, and so give him every opportunity to grow into that role, I think will be important. I guess the challenge will be if Australia goes 1 or 2-0 down early in the series and he hasn't scored any runs, there's going to be enormous pressure from the public and the media and everyone on the outside to make some changes. So that's probably going to be where the challenges sort of come for selectors. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. Let's hope he gets off to a good start and scores some runs early and Australia have a good start to the series.
The battle between him and Bumrah is going to be one of the most enthralling contests of the series. I can't wait. And I guess looking at India, they've obviously been one of the most dominant Test teams over the past decade, but they are coming off the back of that historic 3-0 whitewash against New Zealand. Do you read a lot into that? And is that something they'll carry into this series, or does this feel like a bit of a fresh start for this Indian team?
Well, I think they'll be seeing it as like, okay, let's put that behind us very quickly. I mean, it was a shock. I mean, India do not lose at home very often at all, and let alone 3-0. You've got to give a lot of credit to the Kiwis for the way they performed there. But, the Indians, they'll think, okay, well, the conditions are very different from India to Australia. So, let's just let that series go, focus on playing well in Australia. They've played well in Australia in the last 2 series over here, won the series. So they'll take some confidence in that. Knowing that they've done well over here in the past. But it will be interesting to see how they react. They've been copping a lot of criticism from back home, and particularly some of their biggest names like Robert Sharma and Virat Kohli, who haven't scored a lot of runs of late. So, these guys are proud players, proud Indians, and they'll take a lot of pride in their own performance. So I'm expecting them to bounce back quite hard. But it will be interesting to see if there is any issue left from that previous series against New Zealand. I don't think there will be. I think they're going to come out really hard, really confident, and try and hit the Aussies hard early.
It's been intriguing to see since they've touched down in Perth just how secretive the team's been. Obviously, they're trying to train behind closed doors. I don't think any of the players have spoken to local media yet. Does that come down to a bit of just how Indian cricket culture is, or is there a reason behind them being just a little bit secretive heading into this first test?
Well, there's always an intensity around this Indian team because I can understand why they want to black out the nets and things like that. It's not so much worrying about Australia watching them train or some spies in there seeing what's going on. It's more about their fans. Their fans are so fanatical. And literally, if the nets were open, there'd be probably thousands and thousands of people coming down and watching, the Indian team train, particularly watching Virat Kohli bat. And I think from a player point of view, it can be a little bit distracting at times. And so they probably just want to, let's just be really focused. Let's just be really intense with our training and our preparation. Let's get everything right. And then we can come into the series, in the best possible frame of mind. If you've got thousands of people sort of hanging around the net, making lots of noise and lots of movement, it can be a little bit of a distraction. So I think it's probably more about that side of things than it is, about secrecy or anything like that.
There's a few question marks around India's starting 11. Rohit Sharma has obviously just recently celebrated the birth of his second child. Shubman Gill copped a knock to the finger during the warm-ups ahead of this test. But the other sort of question is Ashwin and Jadeja, who are probably the first names in the starting 11 at home. But do you think they can have two spinners in their first 11 for a test match in Perth, which traditionally favours quick bowling?
If I'm being honest, I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if they played both the spinners. But I don't know. This is India. They'll make their own mind up there. But yeah, you're right. The pitch generally is suited to fast, bouncy, bowlers, I guess, and not as much with the spin. Having said that, Nathan Lyon's got a great record of playing in Perth, and he's actually got the most wickets of Australian bowlers here in Perth. So, I'm sure they'll consider all that before making their decision. They're two quality bowlers, both Jadeja and Ashwin. I wouldn't be surprised if they play just one of them and then play an all-rounder to try and lengthen their batting as well. There's a couple of young all-rounders there in the Indian setup that are exciting. Not a lot of experience of playing in Australian conditions, but maybe they might give one of those guys a go. But having said that, quality, you can't beat quality, no matter what the conditions are. And maybe they'll just think, Ashwin can do a job in Australia on the Perth, pitch. As can Jadeja, and it's probably going to be maybe just as good, if not better, than maybe a seam bowling all-rounder. So it's going to be a fascinating watch. Don't probably have the right answer at the stage, but I'd probably be surprised if they play both spinners.
I guess looking at the Australian team, they're pretty stable. This is the same core group they've had for a while. The only slight question mark would be around Manus Laban, who's, by his own standards, had a quiet 24 months or so. Would he be feeling a little bit of pressure ahead of this series where historically Cheteshwar Pujara was the number 3 who was winning them series just through batting time? Is there now that sort of reliance on Labuschagne to serve a similar role?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be feeling a little bit of pressure. I mean, he's a guy that just loves batting, and when he's not scoring as many runs as he would like, then, you start getting a little bit anxious. So he'll want to start the series off really well. I've been watching him pretty closely in the lead-up to this test series, and he's practicing really well. His technique looks solid. He looks, nice and sound. He sort of made a couple of little small adjustments, like from a game plan point of view, that where he thinks India are going to bowl him. And, it's a real confidence game. And a lot of these guys, if they can just get off to a good, positive start, get that first score under the belt, then you can just relax and feel like you're in the series, you've had a good look at all their bowlers. But if he gets a couple of low scores early, then that tension will just start to rise again. And I saw the critics out there will sort of start coming to the fore. And that's what Test cricket's all about. As a player, you've just got to try and somehow deal with all those external distractions and just focus on what's really important to you out in the middle. So, every player goes through certain periods of their career where the runs aren't flowing as much as what you'd hope or what everyone else expects you to. But we know he's a quality player, and we know there's probably big runs just around the corner.
I know you've got other media obligations to get to, so I'll thank you for your time. But before you go, could I always get a series score prediction and a prediction for player of the series?
Oh, it's going to be so difficult. I mean, there's so many great players from both teams to be actually able to predict who's going to be man of the series or anything like that. I'm actually predicting Australia to win and win quite well. I think particularly starting in Perth, then going to Brisbane, then tough going for the Indians. So I'm picking Australia to win 3-0, which might be controversial and it might be a bit of a stretch, but I think Australia are really primed for this series. And I think man of the series, let's go. Let's go. No, I don't know. Let's go with Khawaja.
Love it. Usman Khawaja, who celebrates his 38th birthday next month, I believe. He's heading towards the twilight of his career, I suppose. But yes, absolutely. Michael, thank you so much for today. Really appreciate you having on and looking forward to the first test, which starts this Friday.